last we left off, the next step is refactoring, assigning the role to category. So let's go look at that. That's in the Yacht controller. So what's the first thing we do when we come back to a code base that we haven't looked at in any amount of time? Run all the tests. So let's run all the tests. Well, yes, write some tests, but first we got to run all of them because we got to know where we are. But I'm glad I've trained you well. This will take longer than usual because it's gonna. The stuff has been blown out of the cache. Maybe I should restart IntelliJ. Wait, am I using the EAP? No, I'm using the release root. Dun, dun, dun. Sam Garen was going to ask, by the way, the fancy picture you have on TDD open source, or is it proprietary to your training work? Also, would you have something similar for explaining DI inversion of control? Trying to get the concept across to my mentee. Are you talking about the sort of the hexagon-based spiral for the TDD cycle? It's copyright, but it's totally available. So you can use it as long as you reference. Hit me up on the Discord. I'll send you a clean copy. And in terms of, do I have anything similar for DI inversion of control? I don't think I've got any good diagrams for that. I do have a bit of that. That would be, there's some stuff I have in my training class that I'd have to pull out. So nothing is nice for that. That's actually something I do want to work on. Is some better diagrams for things. Dr. Xmasizi recently used something I learned from your stream, using a class to introduce a type. Yay! In this case, it was to ensure a password string was indeed encrypted. I encapsulated the string in a password class. Cool. Yeah, hit me up on the Discord, Simon. I'll post the diagram, and you're free to use that. I mean, I've tweeted it out, so no worries about that. Well, that's not like, I don't know. I mean, if somebody steals it, who cares? But yeah. Okay, so all our tests run. So that's all cool. I mean, to me, like, I reference in my classes diagrams from other folks, like Bill Wake, who who's also doing the Yacht TDD using Swift. I mentioned that in the Discord. I pull some diagrams from him, and it's, you know, that's fair use if you reference it, and it's educational material, even if it's copyrighted. You know, you're free to use that stuff. Yeah. All right. Let's see. So IntelliJ, I think IntelliJ is all okay right now. All the tests pass. So let's see. Go there. And let's okay. So we wanted to refactor this assign role to categories thing. Because from out here, right, from the outside, it looks fine, and this is actually appropriate for IntelliJ. Am I going to have to restart you? Don't make me restart you. Something is using up all my... Something is kicking up the fan. Hold on. It looks okay. It's a little iffy. All right. Tempted to do Yacht old code in basic without tests just to mess with everyone. Do it. Okay, so we're fine with this because remember that way back here on the roll result page. All right, I think I'm going to have to restart IntelliJ because it is not being nice. Let me go restart. Validate caches restart. Let's just restart. I don't think I need to invalidate caches. Oh, oops! It's going to terminate. Oh, it's terminating the Yacht application. Wonder if that was causing the problem. Has it been running all this time? Kill it. I'm always worried that my overlay, that the overlay is going to disappear when I restart because it's serving up the pages, except it's already served the pages. And so it's all now running browser side. So I don't have to run it. That's kind of cool. Someone Gearing says, the funny thing is I doubt it would be as much code as simple procedural single app and no tests. Yes. And I've looked at, like, I think this, one of the places I looked for sort of the instructions or rules of Yacht was on one of those. Was it Exorcism? I think it was Exorcism. And you can look at how other folks solved it. And I looked at some of that, and I'm like, yeah, sure. If you do it that way, it's easy, right? If you just do it the easy, straightforward way, it's easy. Hey there, Ava. How are you? Welcome to the stream. All right, I think IntelliJ is okay now. Let's go back to TDD Yacht. Hey, TBD gamer, welcome. Right, so what? Boy, train of thought has just gone bye-bye. So from the front end, it's what we want is actually for it to basically translate this ones and twos and threes and full house to basically how the thing gets scored. And so so from translating from the outside into our domain, it's fine to take the text, but when we get inside our domain, we want something nicer. So it was interesting in the article that I posted in the Discord by Herberto about value objects, and he sort of compares and contrasts to. I think he has a different article on DTOs. And it's interesting because to me, it's really straightforward the difference between DTOs and value objects. Like, are they at the boundary or are they in your domain? If they're in your domain, they're value objects. If they're at the boundary, they're DTOs. That's the T in the DTOs transfer. So to me, I would have written a shorter article. But that requires like you to understand the difference between inside the domain and outside the domain, which is a whole separate thing. That's a book. The example he showed was actually PHP, and I wish he had more examples. Hey, Eva, I'm glad you found me on Twitter and recommended you. Always good to be recommended. Right. So let's go to our controller, Yacht controller. And so right now, this is the ugly thing, right? This we know there's duplication, or just bad code here. This is what I would consider a long method because it would take me a longer time to understand what it's doing. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to have something that can translate the text into basically something that we can use more easily. And we talked about possibly an enum. And so what's interesting is, let's see. So if we, so if we do it as an enum, let's see how that goes, because I'm really trying not to like think 3 steps ahead or even 2 steps ahead, because I'm thinking, okay, if we do enum, then where is the decision? Basically, where does the decision happen? But let's since we've been reading the TDD by example book, let's take a really tiny step and just convert it over to enums and see what that looks like. So this would be category, yacht category, score category. Yeah, score category. So let's do that. Let's go create an enum for category. And hey, put it on our production code. Cool. I know what Kent would say. Take a smaller step. So let's see. Do we want to change? We've got a category. Let's change the tests to basically push us in that direction. Dr. XMCZ says, I know nothing about internationalization. Would that be another motivation for using enums here? I don't think so, because my the way I would do it is, so on this page that's showing the information, this value is internal to the system, and so that wouldn't change based on language. What would change is basically the label on the button. In fact, what you want is that separation. So this right here in and of itself is almost it could be the number 1, it could be a random series of characters, is basically whatever then gets associated with the thing. So I think it's separate from internationalization. You might want to use the enums and have sort of a display string that's associated with it that could be populated from something that does internationalization, but I think that's separate. Yes, that's very true, Simon. They don't have the experience, and therefore, like, the conception of all the world of possible design solutions that they could choose from. They basically have maybe none or few of those, and so it does make it easier. And I do find teaching TDD to novice and junior developers much easier because of that. That's a really good point. So let's change this to, let's see, let's encapsulate it to, can we refactor this to an enum? I want to introduce enum, but I don't think there is one. So we'll go the manual way. Let's introduce this as a constant. And, extract as enum constant. So can we just move this into, this will be in the domain. What do we call it? What the heck do we call it? Score category. Where is score category? There's Yacht score. Hold on. Where did score category go? Oh, it got put in the adapter web. Is that where it belongs? I don't think that's where it belongs. Let's move that. Okay. So, okay, take 2. Let's extract this into a constant, and we'll move it to another class, and we'll say extract as enum constant, and see if that works. Well, that worked. Sorta. No, that didn't work. Why would you do that, IntelliJ? That's not what I wanted. It was very close, but not what I wanted. Why would you lie to me like that? I feel so misled. I was like, oh, you're gonna be smart enough to do what I think you're gonna do, and nope. All right, so it's basically 3s. At least it put it in the right place. So, like, I mean, it would have been a more complex refactoring, so I'm actually not surprised, but it was a little bit confusing, the dialogue that it showed. Okay, so what we want to do now is to take another small step, because right now we're in red, right? We've got a compile error, so we're in red, and our goal is to get back to green as soon as possible. So we can change the parameter directly to score category. So if we do that, the question is how much of a change is that going to be? Well, it's only used by tests right now. And of course, the string that comes in is a string. So we could just change it to an enum. Do we want to do that? I don't think we want to do that, because the enum is in the domain. And I don't think we want to tie. I don't think we want to tie it too directly. Yeah, I could have taken smaller steps there, Dr. Equinity. I could have extracted to some string constants. But what we're trying to do is, we know we have a design goal in mind, and so we're trying to head to that. So just because we're letting the test drive our design doesn't mean we don't use knowledge and information and judgment that we have. So I think I'm going to leave this as string. But then really the problem is that this should be, let's see. So we want something that's going to translate the string to an appropriate method call. And that's why I'm wondering if enums is going to get us there. Because we could just change this to string. We could do that. So now we're in green. Now we can go here. So if we run this test, this will fail because we're not ignoring case, right? Yeah. Oh, well, we sort of are. Except here we're not. Here we are. Here we're not. So this test should fail. So let's make it fail. Yeah. Oh, that was the 2 steps ahead, Nazar Chops. That was the where I was thinking we were going to end up. But now it's feeling less like an enum and more like the hash map. Yeah. Yeah, we could do a switch, but I think we can just build the work into the thing. Okay, so this test fails because 17 was not 6 because it wasn't scored correctly. So let's fix that. Because what we want is this to be score category. Create a local variable. That's going to be a score category. And that's going to be score category, the value of category to uppercase. And then this becomes equals freeze. So this should make the test pass. And it does. And I should stop running all the tests. because those spring tests are slowing me down. Hash map is nicer. I was thinking simplest solution, but yeah, I mean, I'm fine skipping over the switch and going directly to hash map. Characterization is easy. Replace conditional with hot polymorphism. Oh, what did we break? Aha! Well, so we fixed that test, but we broke other stuff because the value of doesn't work. Mainly because we got an illegal argument exception. So let's see. So which direction should we go? We've got test category time. Do you mean testing the enum? Not sure what you mean by test category. So what we could do to get back to green is fix this one by basically adding ones, because that's the only one that's causing a problem, right? Ones and full house, actually. So we could just go create those enums and not change anything else, actually. Let's do that. Let's create those enums. We won't do anything else. That will get us to green quickly. So we've got threes, got ones, and we got full house. Which, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, we'll figure that out when we get to it. Let's run all domain tests. Okay, so those all pass. So we're back to green. So now we can do some more refactoring. So let's go ahead and change our test for the ones category. Where is that? Ones. Threes. Full house. Oh, here's ones. Okay. So this one we can basically change to ones. For category ones. To string. That should continue to pass. And it does. And then we can change full house. Full house. I don't know why you're not helping me out here, IntelliJ. Oh, because it doesn't fit. Okay. That should still pass. And it does. So we've gotten rid of strings as our score category. Well, we haven't gotten rid of strings. We just use now the enum version. So now we can change this to be if score category equals ones, and that should still pass. How enum is going to work with else case for full house. We're not checking it right now. That's by default. We'll need some more tests to flesh out that code. Oh, do I have a way to separate tests into groups or categories so I can run expensive tests? Yes, that's what I've done. So here I've got all tests, which is all tests. And I've got domain tests, basically those that are not tagged with, what did I tag it with? So for example, not that one. Where is it? Not that one. Yeah, so this one I've tagged it with spring. That's the only slow one. And this one, which is the web test, is also tagged with spring. So basically my all domain test is basically run all the tests that are not tagged with spring. I could do suites inside of suites, but I prefer tags rather than sort of containment, because it allows me to easily just add or remove a tag. Yeah, test tags. And in IntelliJ, it was broken like months ago when I first used it, but it seems to be working fine now. If you look at, no, not that. So if we look at what that looks like, we basically say tag expression, and you can say not spring. And obviously you could do it the other way around, only run tags that have spring if I wanted to. So IntelliJ makes that really easy. Equals instead of dot equals. Equals is fine for these are final constants basically. So equals is fine. You can tell because IntelliJ is not complaining. Tag is a JUnit annotation. Yes. In fact, it is a JUnit 5 annotation. There was there something similar in JUnit 4? I forget, but it's a JUnit 5 tag. Yeah. Okay, so all our tests are passing. We should probably do commit. I think. Let's do a commit. Extracted score category enum. We'll commit that. So in Java, there is just double equal. And it means, well, for primitives, it means has the same scalar value. And for objects, are they pointing to the same reference? So in TypeScript, equal, and triple equal. The triple equals, well, it's JavaScript underneath, so you got all the messy auto whatever stuff in JavaScript. Yes, well, where does C# take it from? So since these are basically singletons, there's only one object reference in memory. That's why the double equals is fine. Okay, so, oh, Ava, thank you so much for the subscription. Appreciate it. C# during G++. Hey now, that's totally correct. Thank you for the subscription. I totally appreciate it. Hey, Microsoft has still a lot to answer for J++. Okay, so we got our test pass and we committed. So what's the next tiny step? We've now made this uglier. Look at that. We've made this. How did we make this uglier? We made this uglier. Well, maybe it's slightly nicer. So now we need to really fix this. So, I feel like once we've translated it to an enum, this code should be somewhere else. So the question is, where should it go? So currently, I mean, we could. Where could we put this? So we're in green, so we can refactor, right? So that we're safe to refactor and move stuff around. So one possibility is basically embed the work inside score category. So basically we could say like score category score for, and then pass in the game. We could do something like that. Yeah, I mean, that would be pushing. We could right now, I mean, this might not be great the way this is in game itself. So that's a possibility. I literally had that on an MSDN CD, found Visual Studio 2003 install media. I still have my, I came across way back when, I forget what program it was. May have been MSDN when they had the big zip binder of CDs. I was digging that out the other day. They're all completely useless. I don't even know what to do with them. How do you recycle that stuff? So, so we could. So this is an interesting thing, right? Because if we look at how game currently does this, this is the actual scoring. And so the question is do we just pull? So game basically defers this to Yacht score. So this is an interesting design issue, right? Because we've got game basically incrementing its score based on what the scorer does, but we're deciding how to do the scoring based on. So this design has kind of gotten weird. So what's the tiny step that will get us closer? So we could do what Nazar suggests, and basically do an assign role for category, or just assign role for and pass in the score category, and so this will be game. We could do something like that. Ava on the web says, I have to admit this is a little over my head these days. I have to know a little bit of everything. For Ava hosting internet solutions, can't have my developer think I don't know anything. So we could do this. And so I think there's the Yacht score, and its responsibilities are given a dice roll and a specific way to score it. It basically just calculates a score and returns an int. The game is currently incrementing the score based on that. And so we're here. Do we want to be so we'd like to be talking to the game, although it could be a game service, but basically we're talking to the game. So we had game, which was responsible for rolling the dice, knows when the game is over, and knows the last roll. So the current responsibilities of doing the scoring, we basically had thought that, here, let me turn on that camera. Can I turn on that camera? Gonna work? This was the design we had come up with when we were sort of thinking about design the last time. And so Scoreboard is tracking use categories, calculates the total score, and assign role to category. So that really is its responsibility. And I kind of feel like higher definition in real life. I kind of feel like that still works. So if we want to refactor our way to that, let's see. So what would we need to do? We need to extract all the scoring stuff into Scoreboard. So let's do that. So we got all our tests passing. Let's see. Nothing actually changed there. I don't know why it's telling me something changed. Oh, probably just a spacing thing. Okay, fine. So let's create a new object. Scoreboard. Now, Scoreboard, one word or two? I think it's one word. Because I wrote it all in uppercase where the word boundary is, but I think Scoreboard is a single word. Yes. Okay. And so currently the code that we've got in the game for wife says one word, well then it's got to be one word. The spell checker didn't complain either, so spell checker agrees with your wife. So basically we want to move these over to the Scoreboard. We could delegate. Let's see. So who's keeping track of the score? The Scoreboard's keeping track of the score. So let's let's take this one step at a time. Since we're saying that the scoreboard is responsible for the score, let's first move that. I think that will make it easier. So let's this is currently here. We're gonna go move it. I'm gonna do basically a manual refactoring. Put this over here, and then this is going to basically be scoreboard. I don't know why I want to make the B in uppercase. Scoreboard dot score. And we'll go and create a field for that, and that's going to be scoreboard. Yes, game is becoming a composite. Yep. Yep. For now, we'll just instantiate it, even though that's really bad. We've already done it for Yacht score, so hey, who cares what the difference is? Stuff will move around, and we'll get to it. Is new scoreboard. And so we'll need a method here that returns an int, returns score. So remember, we are in refactoring mode, so we're not trying to make tests fail. We are currently wanting to get back to green. So that means here, I think I'd like to basically completely delegate this to the scoreboard. So I'd want to say something like scoreboard. Well, what was it before? Yacht score is full house. So we can say score as one's category. And what it needs is basically the last roll. So I'll create that method. Do that. Score. So it needs a yacht score, so we're going to get that. Let's move that over. I could have left it here, but this way we can see that this is all going to move. So it's pretty much just changing this to scoreboard. Score is full house. And this is going to be score plus equals yacht score. Score is full house. Yeah, and so the map that I think we're thinking of probably will come to here. Current etiquette about where instance variables should get initialized. All in constructor is it okay to initialize them where they're declared? I generally don't create a constructor just for instantiating things. I'm fine with instantiating them here. But as you can see, I'm not consistent. I know that they're eventually going to be replaced by basically constructor injection. So I usually don't have to think about it because it's rare that I end up leaving stuff unless it's containing like an atomic integer or some really appropriately encapsulated class. It's probably, so if it's not something that's a candidate for injection, it's almost a style thing. Yeah. Like, there's no reason for me to have done this, other than I suspect that other than I had to do this. That was why. But scoreboard, I didn't have to. So that's done there. It's funny, I now have this sort of background, like, you're in red, you're in red, you're in red too long, get back to green, going on in the back of my head. All right, so I'm gonna take this and we're gonna say scoreboard score as 6s. Last roll. That. And then this is basically scoreboard score as 3s. I think we should be consistent. This just doesn't need the word category. This is that. Okay, so we're compiled, right? We're all compiled. So all the tests should continue to pass. if we've done our refactoring correctly. And they do. That's good. So we've now pulled score into Scoreboard. So yes, it definitely Scoreboard is definitely an entity. It is a domain object, yes. So we've done that, but now we basically still have this middleman. And do we like that? Do we want to push stuff around? So we said Scoreboard is tracking used categories. So we haven't dealt with tracking, so we'll deal with that. It calculates the total score. We've done that. With handles assign role to category. So coming back to here, did this help us at all? Because we did extract the behavior around scoring to the Scoreboard class, which we know we're going to need. I'm just wondering if it actually got us anywhere. Because we still have this translation of category to communicating that from our adapter to our domain. All right, Dr. Xmas Easy, have a good one. See you next time. So Scoreboard is the home for that translation now, says Simon Gearing. So what I'm struggling with is okay, what would that look like from? Hey there, Disc Your Beard. Should I have something like a score calculator that translate the game actions to the scoreboard? Well, I need something that translates actions to communicating this to the eventually to the scoreboard. And so that's what I'm currently struggling. We basically created an enum, so we could. The question is who is the controller talking to? That's really the question. So Simon says wrong test, unit test for Scoreboard and just testing the translation. I'm not 100% convinced that Scoreboard is the right thing to do the translation. Let me think about that for a second. From a boundary, maybe it's right. Where I'm getting hung up is the boundary. So the translation of the incoming string from the web page to the enum, that's in the adapter, which we've done here. And then any further work of translating the enum to actually the thing to score it against, that could be Scoreboard. Okay. So Offie says the controller is not talking to the game. So that's the question: is does the score does the who do I talk to? I think I still actually talk to the game, but I'm no longer talking with these three things. And this may go back to what somebody had said earlier. I think what we want is something like game assign role. So really it would be game.assign role, not assign toll. Assign role to, and then score category. That's, I think, what we want. And then game would just hand that off to, because we're sort of treating game as a sort of a service a bit, kind of. It's certainly a boundary object. Because otherwise, how would I get access to the scoreboard? I don't want to go through a middleman. So I think this is fine. And then in assign a role to, oh, sorry, I was just looking at a whisper. So Simon King says, I was working on the assumption everything was talking to the game. Yeah, that's kind of the assumption. It was decided what was responsible to delegate to. Yeah, so I think this is basically, we're replacing this. This is going to move into Scoreboard. And then I guess this is just going to delegate to Scoreboard. I think that's right. Is that right? Let's see. And so, Simon Gary, you were talking about a unit test for Scoreboard and testing the translation. Do we need to do that? So I don't. So it's always interesting when basically a new object or new classes come into existence, how much testing we do against that. Since we already have tests, at least for the 3 ones and full house categories, I could be convinced that we don't need to yet write additional tests directly against Scoreboard. We're still sort of in the refactoring mode, but then we can write some tests directly against Scoreboard that all the categories are scored properly. Yeah, okay, so let's do that. So we're basically going to remove this. And we're going to create this. Well, of course you can't find it, because I haven't created it. So this is this, that. We can pretty much just pull this here. In fact, this is actually not here. This is basically Scoreboard. Score as, and then score category. And this is that, and then this is just score is 3s. Oh, we lost the roll. Whoops. Chat was ahead of me. The rules for category utilization will also cover the subset of translation of scores, thinking of adding tests for us, so yeah, I can skip that. Yeah. I think we're on the same page. If not, you will let me know, I'm sure. Okay. Now I've got the last roll. Now I can say score as 3s with last roll. Score as 1s roll. And score as full house. Okay. So everything compiles. Now let's run our tests. And they all continue to pass. So that means our refactoring, for better or for worse, was successful. This is what we were talking about the other week about when it's okay to test more than one object in the same test, and that unit test is not always equal a single entity. Right. Yeah, so we basically have, and right, we've got a totally new class, Scoreboard, that's got some behavior in it, but it is currently not directly tested. There's no tests that are testing it directly. And that's fine, because we refactored our way here. We still have some ugliness here. But it's sort of like the further we hide this, hopefully the more it becomes clear what we need to do. In fact, what we could do is, I bet we can make this private. So we can take this out. This is no longer used. Where is this used? So this is currently used in a test. So now we're at the stage where we're basically sort of eliminating duplication or eliminating unneeded code. Some gearing, in essence, decision making about when to jump up and down scale of scope under test and level of details appropriate to use case and how the use case defines a unit in a given context. Yes, and I wish I could. I was gonna say I wish I could draw what this looks like in my head, but you know what? I have the technology to do that. It's awesome technology. Called paper. So what we've been doing is we basically pulled out this thing over here called Scoreboard. So previously we were testing this thing called game, and the stuff around scoring was in here. And so we had tests running against that. And then we extracted through our refactoring, we basically pulled this out to here. But our tests are still testing at this level. We are not. And so we've jumped down now to something that we've refactored. We've pulled the stuff out of here. We don't need to write yet any tests against this directly. We could, because the tests that were here that were maybe a little awkward to work with, we could now push down into here and basically into new tests that would test directly against this. And that would reduce some of the tests we have here. So for example, if we look at this test, right? If we look at the complexity of this test, we want to test that 65456 when it's scored as 6s results in 12. This is a very complex setup just to test did this get scored correctly. And so this was fine, right? It made sense from when we wrote the test. But now we could say, well, why am I bothering with game? Game is no longer the thing that's doing the scoring. That responsibility is moved. Right, so since we're currently covering that, we're covered. So we don't have to write additional tests. Hey there, Luscott. Welcome. But what we can do is we can now change this test instead of, and we call it game test, but really this stuff is actually scoring test. So the name of the test wasn't great. All right, let's clean up the name. We might be able to move these around, but for now, we could grab this one. Let's grab this one. Right, so to get this one done, we had to create a dice roller for it. We had to instantiate a game. We had to roll the dice, but we had to set that up in a way so that we could get to it. And so this test is actually more setup work than we really want. So what we can do instead to test that this works is say Scoreboard. And we want to score this as 1s. So we have a couple of choices. We can call scores 1s directly, but I think I want to continue using the score as. So we can score as score category of 1s. And then give it a dice roll. Well, that's easy. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we can get rid of this code, and now we can ask the scoreboard what the score is. Much simpler setup. We're, to use my analogy that I seem to be using it a lot. Instead of trying to test the light switch using a 10-foot pole, we can move over and stand next to the light switch and flip it on and off. Much easier. Yes, I will be pulling the scoreboard now that we realize that we're no longer testing game direct. We're no longer testing this through game. We can now move this to basically scoreboard category scoring tests or something like that. So we'll certainly do that. Discovered, is scoreboard instantiated in game? Yes, currently it is. We may find that actually we want to inject it. It would not surprise me. So let's go move this over. Can I do that? I always forget if IntelliJ lets me do this. And I'll copy the class. Yeah, I want copy method. I want move this to different test method. Where's the move instance method? So I can do that. There are no variables that have reference type. Would I like to make methods static and then move? See, no. I'll do it the hard way. So grab this. We'll create a new class. We'll call this Scoreboard. Scoring test. Put that in here. How did Scoreboard get put in adapter web? That's not right. This shouldn't be. This is a domain thing. I blame IntelliJ. I'm going with that. Okay. That up. Go back here. Cool. Go back here. Okay. I'm hearing you see this refactoring a lot in legacy code, pulling out code into a new object that's easy to place fully under test and utilizing the legacy parent. It's just, I mean, it's not just for legacy code. I do this all the time in TDD code, right? This is not strange or abnormal for me to do this. As you start, I always think of like, you know, if you pour sand onto a flat surface, right? Eventually it builds up to a point where you start adding more and it starts flattening out, right? Basically, you know, some ratio to how much wide it takes, but like it starts, you know, getting wider. And I see when you're developing with TDD, you're constantly you're pouring more sand on it because you're adding more features, you're adding more functionality, and eventually it's not going to be able to support the weight of all those features without expanding the number of classes you have. And so to me, this is just a natural part of the process. Oh yeah, well, okay, yeah. So it's totally useful for anything, and yes, particularly legacy code. There's the what is it? There's this, not Strangler. Sprout? No, that's not Sprout. I'd have to pull out my legacy codebook. And so yes, well, Office asks, but in this case, aren't we going to test the same behavior as game test? Yes, we're basically, now that we can test this more closely to the thing that's doing the work, right? We want to try we want to try and stay close to where the work is. And so basically I'm going to move these tests out of game test into scoreboard test. So it's not testing the same behavior. We're changing the test because the name stays the same. And this is why I like good method names, right? Given last roll of this, score is full house results a score of this. And so this doesn't require us anymore to have game. We can test this more directly. Now there is somewhat of an implication around the last roll, but I'm not too worried about that. That I think we'll have other ways to cover that. Let's get, okay, big question. You've got a lot of code, 30,000 lines of code, without any tests written for them. My condolences. But you can celebrate that it's legacy code because otherwise nobody would care about it, providing value. I'm starting to hit the downsides of this. My condolences. Bear with you. How would you go about adding tests for a project of this size? The design document doesn't always necessarily allow me to write unit tests for everything. So do I refactor a bit of time and add tests to that? Or do I have a suggestion? So characterization tests are going to be really helpful. In fact, in my Discord I posted a video, sort of an intro that Canton Coders, another streaming group, did to sort of show how to do this. Right, they're basically taking this tennis game scoring and pulling out characterization tests. And so that's what you're going to want to do. And if you don't have a copy of Working Effectively with Legacy Code, you're going to want to get a copy because it talks exactly about that situation. So characterization tests are a way of, I need to write tests so I can start being comfortable writing, doing some refactoring, because you could do refactoring without tests, but you'd like to at least reduce the risk. So what I would say is write characterization tests around the areas where you found bugs as best you can. And then you can start refactoring that and start then also writing more tests. As you sort of peel off other things, you'll pull out things just like we did right here. And then you'll be able to start writing tests against that smaller thing because it'll become easier. And so that is your basically go-to technique. So characterization tests, there's also a library called approval tests that does some similar things, or at least provides a way to make it easier to sort of say, this is what the code is doing, it therefore must be correct because it's doing it. And so therefore I basically base my test on what that's doing. And so approval test is a library that may provide an easier way to do that. But you definitely want to start with tests. And again, you're sort of creating those tests to codify what the existing code does. Nazar says, I would like to see the scoreboard test fail now after the move. It is very easy to end up with a class that is ignored by a test runner. I don't think that's a problem. But you're saying we would like this test to pass after moving it. That has never been a problem for me. We could always do that though. We could always say, and it does fail. I'd probably do that more often if I ever ran into that, but I tend to basically copy the test as a whole. And because the project is set up properly, it'll run, and I'm running all the tests, right? So this is the key. I'm always running all the tests, and therefore it always picks up all the tests that are in the com.jitter.ted Yacht package. So when I move tests in sort of in full, I don't usually need to have them fail. But that if I felt like that ever happened more than a few times, then yes, I might make it fail. Simon Gehring, yes, refactoring, yes. So you want to use the best, I don't know what language it's in, but you want to use the best refactoring tools you can get, because if you know, not that there's no risk to doing automated refactorings, but they're likely to be much lower than if you do them manually. And you're going to want to take tiny steps, and so you're going to want to lean on your source code control, making it easy to back up in case you go down a direction. Yeah, so if it's in Java, IntelliJ will definitely help you a whole lot. Absolutely. Let's see, what did I miss on chat? Simon Gehring says there's going to be a moment where you will have to chop some code without tests, but in a legacy code base, if you do nothing, then the problem just gets worse. Yeah. I mean, you're going to get to you're definitely going to find code where there's just no easy way to write tests, and you're going to have to find other ways to verify that the behavior hasn't changed. Maybe you've got some very slow to run end-to-end tests that you can lean on, and that you're going to want to run on a regular basis. They might, if they take a long time to run, you're not going to want to run them often, but you're going to want to run them a bit. And you may have to, depending on how bad it is, you may have to do some manual testing to make sure you haven't broken anything. But as much as possible, you want to try and write automated tests, even if they're really ugly and get replaced later. Yeah, and so I actually sort of talk about this book. I had a post. Where is it? So I mentioned this. I mentioned the book on that post. And yes, absolutely, Simon Gearing is 100% correct. If you can pair or do it in a mob, that will be very, very much better than trying to do it alone. You know, that's true in general, but specifically, you know, refactoring or without much of a safety net. All right, we were moving more tests. Let's finish moving the tests. Sorry, that's the score. We want, where is it? So here we can basically take this test and move it over to the scoreboard scoring test. Scoreboard. Scoreboard. Whereas for category house. And then dice roll of 44455. Oops. We've one too many lines of code. And then here, it's pretty much scoreboard. We'll run all our tests. They all pass, that's good. Oh, so here's a test that I was wondering if I had covered. Basically, the last roll returns the value of the most recent roll of the dice. And so we've got code that covers that, so I don't feel bad about basically getting rid of this line of code when I move it over to the scoreboard test. Let's move this test over. And we'll pretty much do same thing here. This is what category? 6s? Oh, we don't have 6s. Okay, so this is good. Yeah. So we'll have to invent 6s. And this is dice roll of. And then this goes away. And then this is scoreboard. So we'll have to do this. Enum constant 6s. And since here we basically we went red and then now we're green again, I may want to just make this fail just so I can be sure that it fails as expected. So it does fail. Now I'm not sure if it will succeed. I'm not sure if our scoreboard does that category, and it doesn't, which is interesting. That means we've got behavior that was in game that is not in scoreboard. Some Gearing says should probably add a happy path integration test at some point. We have integration tests. We could run those, and they are happy path. We actually have those. I just haven't been running them as we've been refactoring. But we'll run them once we're done. Once we get this test to pass, I'll run all of them, and we'll see if we've broken anything. So let's go and fix this. So notice that because I created this new. It didn't exist before, therefore couldn't have possibly been covered by a test. I wanted this to fail explicitly because I wanted it to fail in a way that I knew it would fail. So I was verifying that it was failing correctly, and now it failed because there's some code that's missing. So let's go score as. So let's make this pass, but boy, this is really getting annoying, isn't it? least it's annoying me. So now I expect this to pass. And indeed it does. Okay. Let's go back to here for a second. So let's look at these tests. Roll dice, then query. New game is score of 0. That's fine. Last roll returns value of most recent roll. That's fine. This one I'm going to leave here. Do I need to leave this here, or can I move this? I think actually this one I can move as well. Yeah. Oh, hey, Luska. Thank you so much for gifting that tier 1 sub. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Did I miss anything in chat? Oh, Offie says, I can see that now while reading Kent's book, it's really awesome to see what we can get just by creating this test first. We learn to be the consumers of our API. Yes, absolutely. That is like one of the most important things. I mean, everything's important, right? But it's really like, I go back, if I'm writing code first, I'm like, how do I know how do I know I'm going to use it this way? And by writing the test first, we really get a sense of how does this feel as a consumer of this API? Do we like it, or is this really awkward? So yeah, absolutely, and it works at all levels, and yeah, it really helps to figure out how do I want to interact with this thing and get the behavior that I want. What would be the way to think about it? Because now, even if I'm writing the code first for some reason, I'm still mentally thinking about what would this look like from the caller's point of view. And when you do test first, you literally have that caller's point of view. If you're hearing very faint background music, that's my very faint background music. Because the game does not have any sound. So let's move this. Well, TDD is a nice way to do everything, isn't it? Nazar says, since we extended Enum, now we have one extra category that was not available in the controller before. Now controller accepts 6s. Is this a side effect? Yes, so it could be that there's more behavior that is supported now that is not being tested through the controller. But we are, in a sense, getting that for free. And maybe we're not comfortable with that. And so we could go to our controller test. Let me just paste this before I forget it, and then find that I'm missing a test. So we go to the Yacht controller test. We don't yet have one for 6s, and I don't kind of feel like we need to. Right? I kind of feel like what we might want to do is have a way to say, do you handle all the score categories? But we'll get to that when we get away from passing in string. So we've still got some refactoring to do around this. So it's possible that somehow we pass in score category 6s to string and it doesn't work. Although at this point, I don't see how, right? Because there's no behavior here. This is pure delegation. So the only thing that could go wrong is that this value of is broken. So we might want to have some way of checking that. While we're here, let's actually run all the tests. Okay, so all our tests pass, including our basically MVC based tests. Yeah, and that's a good point, Simon Gearing. Need to be careful not to end up repeating unit tests that are down at this level with stuff at a higher level. And so you really need to be careful about what are you testing at each level. And this is something, so I forget if I posted this in the Discord. James Schroer posted something about, or tweeted something about code coverage, and don't use code coverage while you're doing TDD. And I'm going to disagree slightly with him in the sense of you don't use it to know to hit some arbitrary amount, but it can be a good guide to say, have I missed something? Because sometimes even in TDD, it's still possible to miss something, especially during the refactoring stage. And so you can just use it as sort of, you know, hey, am I missing anything? So not running it all the time, but just as a check, as another way to check, am I missing something somewhere? Or even, hey, if I delete this test, does that really change my coverage? Because I feel like it's redundant. So I think it's useful in that very, very limited way. But beyond that, I wouldn't use it. Ava on the web, nice music. No sound in the game. No sound currently. We may get there. We'll see. I did find sound effects for how dice sound when they get rolled on a table, so we might use that. Simon Gearing says code coverage is what I like to refer as an inverse metric. Yeah, I don't like to use it as a metric. I don't like to use the number. I like to explore what is covered and what isn't. But I don't like to look at the numbers at all. So Nazar says, well, my concern was that score category on the controller level could suppose to have less values than internal score category on the level of scoreboard. So score category on the controller level. Yeah, I guess the only thing that would concern me is somehow that this is not a score category that's covered by the assign role to, which we already know is a concern. Right, we already know this is a concern. And so now that we're closer to scoreboard and we have enums, we can now write tests to say, do you score all the different categories correctly? And so that's probably the next step we're going to do, I think. Maybe. Let's do a commit though. Because I think we actually did way more than should have been done in a single commit. So what did we do? So we basically extracted scoreboard. To its own class, and then moved tests from game test to scoreboard scoring test. Now that we're able to write tests closer to the metal. Now I'm thinking like closer to the metal. Is that the right idiom that I want here? I don't know. Yeah, I almost want the code coverage, and maybe you can tell me this, is like, which tests are covering this, which branches are being covered by which test, and I might sort of have too much coverage. But I guess if one of the tests breaks, and this is where I used to have at, gosh, which company was it? At one of the companies I worked at, there were ways to tell. Oh, well, one of them was at Google, where they basically were able to figure out, based on tracking the coverage for each test, they would actually reverse it and figure out which test did they need to run to cover that code. And that was a way to reduce test runtime. But you could certainly do it and say, hey, these two tests are covering the same code, so you can get rid of one of them. Commit bot's tired. That's okay. Let's see. So that's move decision code from Yacht controller to score board. Okay, I think that's good enough. Commit. Cool. Am I dropping frames? I don't think so. Everything looks green. Can we have a look at that coverage? We sure can. Let's go on our all domain tests. Let's go cover. Let's embiggen this part. So we've got 100% class coverage, 92% method coverage, 96% line coverage. And if we drill down to that, so we've got 100% coverage of everything except dice roll. We could drill into dice roll and see what's not covered. The toString is not covered. And the hash code is not covered. I'm good with that. In game, what is not covered is assign role to number one's category. Yes, because this is dead code, and we actually have some dead code that we need to go remove. But otherwise, we have 100% line coverage. Doesn't tell us if we have 200% line coverage. That's something that I would like to know. So let's go delete this, since this is dead code. And I think we can actually delete this as well once we move this test. Oh, so we move this test, but we didn't finish translating it to use Scoreboard directly. So let's go do that. The dice roll remains the same. We don't need this. We don't need that. And we don't need basically these artificial rolling of the dice that we kind of needed before. So what we can now say is we'll need a scoreboard. And so now what we can say is scoreboard, score as, score category, full house with the full house roll. I must be a little hungry because immediately I got thinking of like the roll as the food and not roll as the dice roll. So we'll score it as that is full house, and we will score as sixes. Score category. The sixes roll. We can delete. Okay, so now all. And now if we go to game, we'll see that this is something we can delete. And this is something we can delete. Not that close to dinner time for me. I just didn't have lunch because I had a late breakfast, so. So now, magically, game is much smaller. We've got, and the only sort of work it's doing is pretty much delegating to Scoreboard, which maybe we're still not happy about. Well, certainly we could probably make this final. That up there. So that's all nice. And now if we go to Scoreboard, this is where we've got some code to clean up. But if we run all the tests again with code coverage, do that. I wanted to run it with coverage. So we're now 100% except for dice roll. Dice roll's toString and hash code. So now we're at 100% coverage for everything, which is not a commit on that, which was removed. No longer game for scoring specific categories. All right. What next? We'd like to clean this up. So we're still in refactoring mode. I'm laughing because I always think it's like, okay, we're still in refactoring mode. I feel like I should have a hat that that says refactoring on it. And I actually was shopping again for hats that with custom embroidery on it. They're so expensive. Like I want to get a bunch of different hats with, you know, refactoring on it or test failing on it, and swap them. But I need to find a good vendor for those. We are now, all our tests are passing. And yes, the heat map idea would be awesome. I wonder, so I'm using the internal code coverage stuff. And I wonder, and so it's using, I mean, it could figure that out. I wonder if there is a way to show heat maps. I'll have to ask about that. If not, there's certainly external tools that can do code coverage. Enum Map. Yes, we learned about that the other week, right? Is Enum Map what we want to do here? So what do we want to do? We want to map the category to the method. Can we do that? So if we create so the enum map is going to map score category to some lambda. Would this just be function? Function? And the function takes a score category and maps it to an no, it doesn't map it to anything. It's really more of a callable than a function. That's good if I do a switch. Is it less code? Depends how you define less. This could be a runnable. Category handler. Score category class. Is that how it works? Supplier. Well, so these methods are void, so they don't return anything. So it wouldn't be it could be just a consumer. Can I do consumer? Yeah, consumer of score category. Could do that. And so then I'd have to instantiate that. I have to initialize that map in the constructor. So category handler map dot a put. So then for score category freeze, we want basically a score category to it's not the score category that it consumes, it's the dice roll that it consumes. And this would basically be score as Or as 3s, which it can convert to a method reference. Yes. Yeah, so I don't actually know if it's shorter than a switch. So we can do that, and then we can say ones. This scores ones. So we've got 1 3s and 6s. Well, maybe we'll write it both ways and see which is 6s, and then this is going to be full house. Because then this is just the map get for category dot accept last roll. I don't know. The switch is much longer. When you switch enum map to map near the final statement, oh, are you saying declare this as a just a map? I don't know. I feel like this is a. Well, we could do that. That's fine. I actually really like this. Right, because we got the setup here. This is where all the work is done. And then the accept is really nice. So consumer is the right thing, and it's typed, so it knows the consumer is consuming a dice roll. I would agree that score as I think is perfect. Now, the only way to really tell is if we run all the tests. Let's run all our tests. Yes, so Simon Gearing, this is really this is the interesting part of long or short, simple versus complex. This is certainly not as, so all our tests pass, so that's awesome. This is certainly not as straightforward as using a switch. However, this is, in fact, I could probably could I get rid of these? They're parentheses. No! Get rid of the parentheses. I don't know why that's, I don't want to introduce the local variable. So yes, this does require one to understand consumer, and this complex generic specification. I always have flashbacks to when I was at Google and we'd be staring, when generics first came out, we'd be staring at code like this and not at all understand it. And so I totally get, from the junior developer standpoint, this would be hard to read. I totally get that. And so it's important, I think, however, we could quote simplify the code by using a switch statement. And it certainly reveals its intention. But I feel like writing code at that level, just because someone might not know it, is worse than teaching that person what that means. And I totally agree that explaining this whole thing for the map and how it works in combination with this and then the accept and how all that works is not a small job. Having taught people how to do this, I totally get that. But I think I would rather raise people up and have them understand it than, I mean, if I were pairing with a junior or novice person, I might use the switch as the intermediary, right? To demonstrate, here's what it looks like and here's how the code looks, and then refactor finally towards the map. but I wouldn't stop at the switch statement. I would want to bring along the person who might not be familiar with it, because they got to get to know it. You can't shield them from this stuff just because it's harder. But you may wait to introduce it. So this is not an easy it's not an easy decision to make. How complex is complex, and how at what point do you say, well, heck, even a mid-level software engineer may not be able to understand X, and so do we introduce that as well? It's a hard problem. It's an interesting point, as it did a similar thing with expression body members in .NET, but got there using a set of 5 refactorings in the tool. Yeah, there may have been a way to get there refactoring, but I feel like we got to a really nice place. And what's nice now, so all the tests pass. Let's run all the tests. Let's call that all y'all tests. And we can now go write tests for scoring with all the categories, now that we have a direct thing to talk to. So if we go back to our cards, we would see that Scoreboard, we've got assign role to category and calculate total score. So it actually coordinates with Yacht score and score category. Close these markers. So if I remember correctly about supplier returns stuff. We don't want to return stuff. Right? The job of our scorer is to take the role and add internally to its score. So it's taking stuff in, it's consuming it, it's not producing it. And but I could be wrong. Let's go look at supplier. Yeah, so supplier is the other way around. Supplier is, I don't need any parameters, but I'll give you stuff. So unless I'm missing, misunderstanding what you're getting at, Afi, I don't think I think supplier is the opposite of what we need. And what's cool is this fits in one window. Look at that, it just fits. It won't fit after we add more categories, though. Simon Gearing, there's a wider discussion in industry as to the extent we devs do complex things for the sake of cool when the value is at best equivalent, if not worse in complexity. Yes, absolutely. There are certainly cases where stuff is made more complicated than it needs to be. And so there's necessary, there's sort of necessary complexity versus maybe unnecessary complexity. I'm not sure how I'd categorize it, but yes, there's definitely let's do it this cool way. Whereas the more straightforward way might be fine as well. One bit of Java, I'm glad LINQ didn't copy Func and Action much easier. Yeah, I mean, LINQ gave you a whole different way of doing a bunch of things, and a lot of the stuff around function and things like that were sort of papered over existing stuff. That's why I stopped working with Scala. Yeah, I kind of feel like Scala is like, if you like complexity and like really complex, there's a level of complexity in Scala, especially because there's so many ways to do things, and I would probably have a better time of it today than I would have 5 years ago, because I've done so much more with types and really thinking a lot about types. I'd probably be happier with it today, but now I don't feel the need for it. I feel like I can get just enough. Scala does want to turn whole programs into one-liners, yeah. And Where that makes sense, sure, but sometimes I do feel like there's a bit of code golfing going on. So if you don't know code golf, the idea is sort of, how can I make this thing smaller and more concise, but not necessarily more understandable? And understandable is in the eye of the beholder, right? And that's sort of the fundamental problem of figuring out how far down the road do I go to make something concise versus understandable. Because I find this to be very concise, but if you don't understand both how the Enum map works and how the generics work and how the lambdas work, that's no longer easy to understand. But then Link sits on top of a mad amount of engineering to get the tooling to be able to simplify the language without compromise on type. I like the autocorrect type safety through inferencing. Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a cost. That's an awesome autocorrection. Type fatty. Yeah, so I was did I post this in the Discord? I mentioned this in our TDD book study group. There was a paper that this fellow wrote, and discusses a whole bunch of things which I think is really interesting. One of the things he talks about is types, and how types basically combine privacy with what was the other word? Sorry, types with secrecy and authenticity. So secrecy and authenticity. So secrecy is privacy, so information hiding, and authenticity means I know, and this goes back to something that was said earlier in the stream, right? I know if I have an instance of this, it is an instance of this, and it's authentic, right? It's not just some random integer. It's actually a quantity of number of items we're going to ship. So that's a really good paper. I need to make sure I posted that in the Discord. Someone remind me in the Discord to post the types paper if I didn't post it. All right, let's commit, because that's what we do when tests pass. Refactored Scoreboard to use Enum Map of or category. What? No autocomplete? Come on, autocomplete. Yep. To consumer to do the actual ring. And of role. Okay. So Sam Gearing says, that's an interesting viewpoint in the C# world in the context of recent transition in the language from OO entity to stateless pure functional. Yeah, I mean, how, you know, as the language transitions and as the language changes and as the sort of the culture around it changes, you don't want to be, you know, you can sort of say, well, I'm not going to use any of those features because nobody knows them. Well, nobody's going to know them if you don't use them. And so sometimes I feel like you get caught in a, well, I'm not going to use that feature because it's in Java 8 and nobody's using Java 8 yet. Well, now we're at Java 14. And if you're basically saying, well, I don't want to use that Java 8 feature because nobody knows it, like streams, then I'm going to say, well, at some point you're not going to be able to read your current code, or anybody who comes in and knows that stuff is going to be starting to write that. So you kind of got to go with the times. But it is a balance, because, you know, you got to bring, you know, a critical mass with you of people who are working on the code base. Right, the secrecy becoming the less important of the two. Yeah, I mean, that's talking about types, and if there's no state, then there's nothing to keep secret. So So types in a functional world are interesting. Disco Beer probably isn't very OO, but couldn't you hide the enum map in the enum itself? So I call the enum with the game. Yeah, I mean, certainly that is an interest. I mean, that's actually what I was thinking about before, right? So I could totally move these actual implementations themselves into the enum. So in fact, there would no longer be a map, or if there was, yeah, it might still have to be a map. So yeah, it could certainly, basically this code could be pushed into the enum itself. I always feel a bit uncomfortable about doing that though. Not that it's bad, it's just my tendency is, and this goes back to maybe because I'm an old fogey, you know, that putting all that code into the enum just feels wrong. But that doesn't mean it is wrong. So let's see. Did I do the commit? I did not do the commit. Let's commit. And now let's flesh out in the 3 minutes we've got left. Actually, let's not do that. Let's take notes for next time. You can put methods on your enum. You've always been able to put methods on the enum. Because enum is just a sugary syntax for classes. And so we could go into our enum and we could have what its problem is. So we could do something like, let's see, what would it be? We would have a constructor that takes a dice roll that does something with it. Do we do that? And this would be consumer. And so we'd save off the consumer. I'm not saying we're going to go this way, but just to see what it would look like, we create that field. And I know we're running out of time, but that's okay. I'll deal with that. That would be that. That would be that. And then basically public void apply. Well, it would need a reference. That's the tricky part. It would need a reference to the scoreboard. And I think that's where I would not feel comfortable doing it, because the apply can't just take the dice roll. It would also need a reference to score or something. So it would become more functional, because then it wouldn't be apply. It would actually be it would return an int to basically apply the score, and this would be, I don't know. So this is no longer consumer. This is really function. Sure. Yes. And this is function. And this is function. So then this is return 2 times roll. Count for 1. Something like that. Then this would that work? We'd have to pass this in, pass in null for now. What doesn't like about this? Extract to method reference. Yeah. Okay. Except I don't want this to be an object. I want this to be a dice roll. And then this is integer. And then this couldn't work. Oh, actually, that's what we want. We want that one. So that's that. That's that. I know I'm ignoring chat. I'm like, how can I, okay. So would actually be function dot apply role. Something like this, and I we'd have to figure out some of the syntax and so on. What am I 30? No. Disco Beard. Oh, I wasn't really thinking of moving the methods. Get the enum to call the games methods since I can pass the game instance in. Yeah, although it doesn't need the game instance. It just needs an instance of the role and then somebody who's going to be accumulating the current score. But rather that, but I think functional would make more sense. So there's probably some way to get this to work. But this is the idea of what it would look like. So from the caller standpoint, we pull it from the map and we basically say score. So sort of from the caller's point of view would be, you know, the score map. You know, get the category, and then basically do apply role comma current score, and it would be score plus score equals that. That's what it would kind of look like. So I'm hearing, so in Java, I assume it's an object do reference type. I assume you're talking about the enum. I mean, yeah, so maybe this answers your question, but I'm not sure. So enum is just, it basically creates a class underneath. We could decompile it if you wanted to look at it. That's basically treats all these as public static final constants. But because it's a class, you can do constructors and you can pass stuff in and you can have state. It's a full class. Love you Java folks, but to misquote Harry Potter, sometimes you're a little scary. And so this function would be take a it'd actually be a by function. All right, I don't want to get I say I don't want to do it, but it would be a by function that takes a dice roll and an integer and basically produces an integer. And so this would do apply, except we might have to convert these to integer. Then I won't need the cast. And this one also has, so this has to also be a by function. And this apply roll score. There we go. This applies. Why is this apply complaining? Oh, we'd make it static. No, we can't make it static. I don't know. All right. Anyway. Because it's a by function is something that takes, unless I have it reversed, right? Accepts two arguments and produces a result. And so it takes a dice roll and an integer and returns an integer. What I'm not sure about is how to specify it. So this would actually be new foo. Sorry, not new foo. New by function that thing. Implement the method. Implement that one, and then we'd return 25 just to return something. So then to replace with the lambda, that's what it would look like. Okay. Sometimes I just forget what the syntax is because I'm not used to calling lambdas that take two functions and sorry, that take two parameters as an entry into the function. And so then I could write code here that basically takes dice roll and integer and does the right thing. Oh boy. Now I want to. So if I went back to Scoreboard and I said scores ones, so right now though the problem is it requires a reference to Yacht score. That's where this breaks down, because this can't calculate it all by itself. It needs the Yacht score to work with it. We could do other refactorings to get that in here, but I certainly wouldn't. So then you'd have to inject the Yacht score. Yeah, no, that wouldn't work, because these need to be functional, and therefore they can't have state, and therefore I'd have to pass in a reference to the Yacht score. This is just all right. Never mind. Let's totally undo this. It was a fun thought exercise, but phew. Hey there, Apatruch. I'm not sure how to pronounce you, but welcome. So what do the style police think of doing that in Enum? Certainly the buy function could be interesting if it didn't require the Yacht score and we just had something like where it could literally translate dice roll and an integer to something that returned that did the right thing. I guess this would be integer. Right, so if this did work, that might be fine, right? So I'm defining the actual, if it was that concise. But since we can't do that, because it requires a reference to something else, I certainly wouldn't push it that way. But if it were a bunch of these kinds of things, that's totally fine. Yeah. Oh, Ava on the web, thank you so much. So appreciate that. And y'all get some more emotes. Thank you. Yeah, so in general, I don't like to put a lot of code. I may put, there are times when I'll put some amount of code in an enum, but it really has to feel like I mean, you pretty much have to define it in the constructor. You can gift to whoever you want. It'd be better if you gifted it to someone who's got the VIP symbol next to them. You're going to be asking. But thank you so much. Yeah, so beyond something that could be self-contained in sort of the constructor. So you'll see things like passing in sort of constants, like something like that. That's fairly common. To put much more code even as a function in the constructor here, that's probably okay. If it's self-contained, I might be okay with that. Anything beyond that, no, I wouldn't do that. And just to note that yes, all so it says this month all subs, bits, gifts, etc. will go to these organizations. This month basically applies to every month. So I was initially only going to do it for June, but I'm just doing it July, August, September, etc. Oh no, you did the gifting wrong. That's okay. We'll figure it out. I could probably if you hit me up on the Discord if you want me to fix that. We can probably fix that maybe. I'm not sure. Well, thank you so much. Yes, thank you for the love. Appreciate it. And since we're over time, right? Because this will remain at less than 1 minute forever. Let's see where we are and what we're going to do next. So let's see. Did I really change anything? No, I just changed some spacing, so that's fine. We'll figure it. It'll all wash out in the end. Let's see. let's go to our README, because I think that's where we're. So we did this. This is still broken. We'll have to fix that next time. This I think we'll fix now that we have a place to fix this. It'll be in Scoreboard, so we'll be able to fix that. We still haven't done this as sort of a value object. That might be something I wanna do next time. Yes, Ava on the web is not a man. But that was sort of the general hey man, but folks is always a good gender neutral. Or just name. So next time what we want to do is add scoring for the remaining categories to Scoreboard and score category. And then we'll probably, since this has been all refactoring, we'll probably want to go back out a layer to the web stuff. I know when I asked at the beginning of the stream, it's like, what should we do? Something with Spring Boot. It turned out we didn't touch Spring Boot. Sorry about that. We'll get a bit more of the Spring Boot next time. So after we do this, we'll probably want to bounce back out a layer to front end web to see what functionality we need next. Yeah, we had an annotation that mentioned Spring, and we ran some Spring tests. So sure, we could count that. I think that's it. So let's, I should actually amend that commit as well. Look, it's a triple amend. I'm actually really happy with how Scoreboard landed with Enum Map. This interaction with Yacht score is interesting. And there'll be more, so it may look right now that this is super simple and maybe this could be moved somewhere, but there will be more work here because one of the things that we're not currently doing for Scoreboard is tracking the categories that have been used. So we'll need to do that. Yeah, today's been some great refactoring. Some good test cleanup, some good refactoring. So yeah, I'm happy. I will see you next time and or on the Discord. Have a great rest of your afternoon, evening, night. If it's past your bedtime, go to sleep.
Be strong.